Hi and welcome back to Small Talk. Merch. No, kidding. Anyway, if you're new here, I am a British national, but I have been living in Barcelona for the last 4 years, and I'm obviously currently experiencing, or have been experiencing, soon to be released, we hope, one of the strictest coronavirus lockdowns in the world. Yeah, it's been extreme. I cannot believe that we have had 2 months, more than 2 months of this, but that's that. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about quite a few things, but let's start about where we are at here in Spain. So here we have been, the way that they're easing lockdown restrictions here is in phases. So we were told a few weeks ago now what this would look like. We are very aware of what happens at each phase and what the sort of different restrictions are and our new freedoms. So it goes from phase 0 to phase 3 and the new normality. Okay, I do a video breaking down what each one looks like. I won't talk about them in detail here because I don't want to make it too wordy, but will link it here. So in Spain this Monday, so the Monday just gone, that's the 10th of May, Monday the 10th of May, half of the country's population transitioned from phase 0 into phase 1 of easing the lockdown. That's meant things like they're allowed to go to cafes if they're at 30% capacity, they're allowed to see friends and family in their houses or outside, limited to 10 people, and they're allowed to travel around their own province. So a lot more freedom. Now, many places were not able to go into this phase 1. They had to stay in phase 0. That included Barcelona here. That includes Madrid. That includes areas outside of Madrid like Castilla-León, Castilla-La Mancha, some of the Valencia region like Alicante, and then places in Andalusia, for example, Malaga. You know that, Brits? You know that. Granada, and then other such places. So we were all held in phase 0, but what we were allowed to do in phase 0 of lockdown is still, if you want to see another video, I have loads of videos about what it's been like in Spain. I'll put them all in the description box, but it's been very, very strict. So in phase 0, the only things that we've been allowed to do, which has been different from what the main lockdown has been, is that we were allowed to go for walks or to do exercise in certain time slots. So between 6 and 10 a.m. For single people, couples, whatever. Then between 10 and 12 for the older generation, and then 12 and 6 for young people, I think, and then for families, I mean, and then again, we're allowed out between 8 and 11 at night. And I have to tell you, it's been wonderful. I have had such lovely walks. And also, I would like to highlight this to my British audience, that actually what we were released into is as strict as your lockdown gets. So our idea of being released was being dumped into what the British lockdown has been this whole time. So I wanted to highlight that because I want to talk about something psychological later, if I can get around to it. So that's that. Anyway, so we are in phase 0 still. Half of Spain has been able to go to phase 1, congratulations. And each phase takes 2 weeks, but obviously it's all dependent on numbers. And also, interestingly, it's all asymmetrical. It's all regionally and different across the geography of the country. So everything changes on the Mondays. So this coming Monday, the rest of Spain is either staying in phase 1 because it takes 2 weeks, or regions that were held back last week are now going to be released into phase 1 tomorrow, actually. So that's Monday the 18th. So regions like the rest of Valencia, the rest of the Valencia region, the rest of the Andalusian region, they are now going to be able to join the rest of the country in phase 1. And actually some places are going to canter ahead into phase 2, which are some of the Balearic Islands like Formentera, etc. Now, Barcelona and Madrid, we're being held back. So while some places are going to phase 2 and the rest of the country goes to phase 1, we are staying in phase 0. And also Castilla-León, which is the area outside of Madrid, and that's where they've had been at one of the epicenters of the pandemic here. Now, the thing is that this new phase is going to be dubbed 0.5, which I kind of appreciate. I feel it's quite cute. I do appreciate it. I'm happy to stay inside if it's for the good of my greater community, and also to keep myself safe and other people and, the health workers and everybody else. to keep society working, essentially. So in 0.5, we are now being told that shops that are under 400 meters squared, they're going to be allowed to open and we can visit them. So it's 30% capacity, but we still have to stick to our scheduled times. But beaches are going to open, but you can't like sit on the beach. You can only walk on the beach, and all the parks are opening. So actually, this does still feel quite optimistic. I'm noticing a little change, and also it's all going in the right direction. So it's not like we're having restrictions further imposed. We are being released, even if it's behind everybody else. Now, I just want to highlight again about how that's regional, and how actually what happens is regions submit themselves and they request to be released. And then the health ministry and the central government, they check it against their criteria for releasing and what's going to be moving into the next. And then they say whether they can be released or not. Now, I think this is really cool because obviously it's the responsibility of the regions. They're allowed to kind of know where they're at. And then obviously it's finally checked by the central government. So Barcelona and that did not put themselves forward to move into phase 1 because they were aware that it was not right. But Madrid did, and they were rejected. And this has created a little bit of tension, which I shall mention again in a second. I also want to kind of talk about how they've also kind of they've even gone further down than the regions. For example, I'm in Barcelona, and members of my province, so the province of Barcelona, which is quite large, they have been released, some of them. So the government here, the regional government here, has asked that some of the satellite towns or some of the towns that are part of the province of Barcelona, if they're showing good numbers, that they can be released. So you can think of it as sort of like your Guildford, your St Albans of London, or Windsor of something, being allowed to continue whilst London is stayed in lockdown. And I think this shows how nuanced it is and how it really is based on data and based on the science and not just on opening up the economy. Because Madrid and Barcelona, if we think about it, are the two most economically productive cities and regions and generate the tourism and everything else. And we're being held back. So you can really see that the focus is on safety and on protecting people rather than like fire up the economic engine again and let's go, there's this sort of stuff. Anyway, I wanted to mention it because I was just listening to the press briefing and a member of the public asked a really interesting question about how maybe wouldn't regional, doing it in this asymmetrical way be better. And there have been complaints by the mayors in the UK, like Andy Burnham of Manchester, the mayor of Manchester. He said that they had no idea what was coming next before the things were announced. So, that doesn't seem like a very good approach. And also, as we've seen, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland have stayed the same and England has diverged. And so there doesn't seem to be much communication between all of them. I don't really know what the overall plan is. And it doesn't look good for me here. Anyway, so other things that are happening is the airports are opening here and now they are going to do temperature checks. So as you land, you get your temperature check to see if you're good to go or whatever. So going back to what this video is about, protests and schools. So with the protests, it's something that we can see that's happening across Europe now and also in the US. In the UK, I know that things have been happening in Hyde Park or Glasgow Green, especially I saw it on Twitter. And actually here in Spain, we have had our first protest. In Madrid, in the Salamanca region, in the Salamanca district of Madrid, which is an extremely wealthy district, they did take to the streets and they've been protesting at the fact that they're not being released, etc. Now, I do want to say that this is an extremely wealthy part of Madrid. The government at the moment is a minority government in Spain and it's a socialist government with a minority partner that's even more socialist. And people who are this neighborhood, this barrio, Salamanca, they voted something like 50% for the opposition party and only 5%. So we did see one paper name it something like the top richest 1% in Spain fighting against their oppression. And I think that, you have to take it in good humour. But then again, it is really worrying because they weren't social distancing. They're possibly screwing it up for the rest of us. And yeah, you're right to protest, but do it responsibly and don't make it bad for the rest of us. I also want to say on that, with the Hyde Park ones, I noticed that police were there. They weren't wearing PPE. You know, they're on the front line. There's too many people around. And I just thought it was really, really terrible that, you know, the police are there out on the front line and they're mixing with people and they don't have protective gear. Like, we can talk about transport workers in the UK, care workers. You know, it's been abysmal. And now we've got teachers coming up. So I don't know. Anyway, I saw that Amber Rudd had been talking about, she'd been praising the police for working without PPE. And I think that's really quite dangerous because actually here, policemen are wearing PPE. And when you go to the metro and you don't have a mask, they give you one. So I think it's kind of an attempt to normalize people on the front line not wearing PPE and doing this whole sort of hero discourse and being like, look at the brave ones, to make it harder for industries like teachers or the others who are saying, hey, this isn't safe for us, to make it seem like they're kicking up a fuss when actually PPE for anybody who's coming into contact should be the norm. You know, supermarket workers have been wearing it. So, you know, I don't really like that. I wanted to talk about it. So going on to schools. With schools, you know, I feel like this has been further of the dividing tactics in the UK, this sort of the UK conversation. I have done a video, what seems like a long time ago now, talking about everything wrong with the UK conversation from my opinion over here. I'll link it again. And things have only got worse. You know, I've seen papers saying like, think of the children, you know, that sort of guilting, this sort of pulling on your emotions, this making it seem like people who have a reasonable concern about whether it's safe to go back, like, why are we opening the schools? Why are we not allowed to see the justification? For example, here in Spain, we've been told that schools won't open until September. Now, some schools are opening to allow parents to take their children there for childcare, much like it's been in the UK up until this point. So that's the date. It says that in September, there's no way that, basically, it says there's no way they can restart the classes without the necessary precautions until September. Whereas the UK is like, oh yeah, no, we'll definitely be ready by the 1st of June. Like, 1st of June, open up all the what? I mean, how? Can you tell us exactly how? Teaching unions looked at what had been set out so far and they said this isn't safe. So why are we saying, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Go to work. And actually then there seemed to be this whole idea of like, well, look, doctors have to do it. And then the British Medical Association and all the top doctors associations came out and said, actually, we stand with the teachers unions in this and we don't think it's safe. Can someone in the government please listen? Oh, actually, no, I think maybe they are, but they don't care. So this idea as well, like, let them be heroes. Let them be heroes. They're supposed to just be doing their job. You know, they're already heroes. They educate our children. They're singly the most important people outside of guardians and parents and stuff. Like, you know, let them be heroes. What, let them die on the front line? Is that what we're saying? Like, let them be heroes. And talking about how unions and teachers are diverging on the issue, I can assure you they're not, because acting like unions and teachers are not the same thing is mad. It's like saying my skin cells are angry at my body. It's the same thing. Anyway, so the way that they've come to the decision here in Spain, just so you know, is that we know that there is a specialist group set up to advise on how to get the education system working again. So it's 8 specialists, and they, among them, we have, I'm going to read it because I thought it was interesting, a child psychiatrist, a specialist in infectious diseases, and experts in pediatric ethics, primary healthcare, and others. Do you know what? Sounds like a pretty broad, good mixed bag that's going to be able to make a decision on the thing that it's been tasked to as experts. So that's great. I would also like to say that, you know, Gove has gone on television and said, you know, you can never eliminate the risk, but, you know, we want to reassure parents that, you know, it will be safe, la la la. Well, do you know what? Like, why are we cantering ahead? Anyway, Boris Johnson has said as well that he understands that some people are frustrated. I don't know why they're clinging to this whole nation thing and why we're not doing it in a more nuanced way. Maybe you have an opinion on that, you know something. I also want to say about the school conversation, like here in Spain, we found out that we've fallen below 100 deaths for the first time since March. Like, this is fantastic. We've fallen below 100 deaths and the rate of infection has dropped as well. The UK is still at the same period, so that was yesterday that I looked at the figures, had 468 deaths in the same period. The last time we had those numbers was exactly this weekend in April, about the 18th of April. A month ago, and we're still not talking about opening up our schools. We're still doing things in this phased way. I mean, half of Spain is freer now than the UK, and because the UK is doing this botched, I don't really know what it is. I feel like all along they prioritized the economy and that they only then switched into this half-assed lockdown because of public pressure, and now they're releasing it, but they actually don't care about this side. They're only looking at the economic damage. And you heard it in the briefing today, because he actually said, I've got it quoted here, a trade-off between health, the health of the public and health of the economy. Literally said that. There isn't a trade-off. There isn't a trade-off. Decisions that we can make about the economy, we can make later on. What it is about protecting as many lives as possible. You know, and then I heard a reporter say, you know, can you guarantee that things would be ready on the 1st of June to allow teachers and students to go back to that? And he said, I want to start by thanking teachers. I want to thank teachers for the excellent job they've done. I'm like, oh yeah, because you've just been allowing the press, like your press as well, your press, to demonize them. And then it's like, oh, thanks, you know, thanks for possibly sacrificing your life again. Same to nurses, thanks. But if you're a foreign nurse, you have to pay, I think it was a 55% increase of a fee to be able to use the NHS services and stuff and work in the NHS. Like, thanks though. Thanks goes a long way. You know, in British society, we love to be polite, you know. So last thing I want to say is I've seen that like a few people have been flouting the rules. There was like 70 people have gathered in a park for a rave in Telford, and they said that they told the police that they were sick of self-isolation. And this is what I want to talk about. I believe that because the UK dragged its feet, I believe that because the Prime Minister went around saying, oh, I'm shaking hands, oh, it's not a big deal, don't you worry, because there was so much minimising, because there was so much understatement, because there's so much kind of confused mixed messaging, that by the time you went into lockdown, it was kind of like, this is a sort of lockdown, but not really. You know, the schools didn't really close. We would hope you stay home, or we would hope you not go to the pubs. Do you remember that period when it was all like, maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should? And then it was like, okay, no, now everybody really does need to go inside because loads of people were dying and it was just terrible. But when you did go inside, it was still not to this strict version. So I feel like the UK public has had a shorter lockdown than most other people, a less aggressive lockdown than most other people, but because of the psychology of feeling like you're in lockdown, everybody agitates at some point. So I feel like being given a walk is the biggest freedom I've ever had in my life. Now in the UK, because you were already sort of free, I feel like the psychology is working in the same way, where you're agitating against your confines in the same way without actually experiencing the same thing, which means that your level of misbehavior is that much more ahead of ours. Do you know what I mean? Like my level of misbehavior would be going to the supermarket at the wrong time. Your level of misbehavior would be 70 people in a park because you feel entitled to see more people. I don't know. I probably didn't explain that so well, but that was my thinking. Anyway, I hope you are well wherever you are. If you like this today, please give me a like. It really, really helps. If you want to see more of me, please subscribe. If you think your friends or family would enjoy this or find it interesting, please share me. I would love to keep making videos for a larger audience. I make loads of videos about politics. At the moment, it has been coronavirus related because it's taken over our lives. But yeah, let me know if you want to hear anything. Sound off in the comments, and see you on the next one.